Welcome to Breakthrough Weekly. I'm your host, Monica Pelayo. This is where we examine the subconscious patterns shaping your decisions so you could change them. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're returning, thank you for being back. Today's episode is titled When Survival Mode is Running Your Life and the Beliefs That Keep You Stuck. Let's begin. There comes a moment when survival stops being theoretical and starts applying pressure. That's where I found myself when my unemployment was about to run out. My funds were limited, and the quiet urgency to be practical began closing in. It wasn't dramatic or chaotic, it was heavy. The kind of weight that sits with you and just doesn't go away. The question I couldn't avoid anymore was simple but loaded. Do I start looking for a full time job and put my business on the side? Or do I stay with what I'm building and trust myself to make it work? Everywhere I turned, the message was the same: be responsible, choose certainty, do what makes other people feel comfortable. So I did what most people do when survival gets loud. I reached out to my network, I started interviewing, I met with presidents and senior executives in the healthcare industry. They were kind, supportive, and open to exploring opportunities. From the outside, everything looked responsible. Internally, though, something didn't sit right. It wasn't until I was already interviewing that I felt the split clearly. I had lived this life before. When I worked at Intel, there was no space for flexibility. There was no room to build anything that required depth, presence, and emotional availability. And hypnosis work isn't something you do on the side. Each session lasts 90 to 120 minutes. It requires preparation, presence, and integration. Trying to do both would not be sustainable. That's when the real questions surface. Very grounded ones and practical ones that forced honesty. What mattered more to me? Did I actually believe in myself as a hypnotherapist, or was I about to abandon this work because survival felt urgent? How much longer could I support myself through the other resources and creative means without putting myself into unnecessary debt? These questions weren't emotional spirals, they were financial, real, and clarifying. My faith in my work mattered more. I know why I do this work. I help people shift their mindset, beliefs, patterns, and identity so they can step into the version of themselves they know they're meant to become. And I had already spent too many years living in survival mode. Yes, survival was comfortable. Yes, it was stable. But there was a quiet emptiness that came with it, the kind you can't ignore forever. I knew without hesitation that I did not want to return to that version of myself. This wasn't denial or blind faith, it was clarity. I had spent years being strategic, resourceful, and disciplined. I had invested carefully and built stability for a reason. This was the moment to use it. I stopped fixating on worst case scenarios and retirement timelines, not because that didn't matter, but because I trusted myself to rebuild later. What mattered now was staying aligned with what actually mattered. Once that decision was made internally, my behavior changed naturally. I didn't panic or ignore reality. I found other ways to support myself without pulling energy away from my hypnosis work. I managed resources intentionally and bought myself time. Fear didn't disappear, it simply stopped being in charge. There's a passage in the Bible that mirrors this moment with striking precision. Jesus is walking on the water while the disciples remain in the boat. Surrounded by wind and waves, Peter steps out of the boat and begins walking toward him. At first, it works. Then Peter notices the wind, the movement of the water, the danger, and he starts to sink. Jesus reaches out and asks a simple question: why did you doubt? Peter didn't sink because walking on water suddenly became impossible. He sank because his focus shifted from possibility to danger, from trust to threat, from forward movement to self preservation. That shift matters. This isn't just a spiritual lesson, it's how the nervous system works. The brain is designed for survival, not success. When attention shifts toward fear, the nervous system activates protective responses: fight, flight, and freeze. In modern life, this shows up as overthinking, hesitation, procrastination, self sabotage, and pulling back right when momentum starts. The water didn't change, Peter did. Beliefs don't originate in adulthood, they're absorbed in childhood during the period when the brain is constantly scanning the environment to answer one question: what do I need to believe in order to belong and stay safe? We internalize what we heard repeatedly, what our parents modeled, what was rewarded or punished, and what felt normal in our environment. Those experiences didn't stay as memories, they became internal rules. Once installed, those rules run automatically. That's why beliefs don't feel like beliefs, they feel like reality. You don't consciously think, I'm not good enough, or this isn't for people like me. You simply hesitate, delay, or pull back without knowing why. That's belief at work. Most people don't fail because they aren't capable. They fail because old subconscious beliefs interrupt forward motion. Survival delays action, delay breaks momentum, and without momentum, nothing changes. This is why people get stuck and resentful. They watch other people grow and tell themselves it's all about luck, timing, or privilege. But most of the time, it isn't. It's about action sustained by belief. Change nothing, and nothing changes. Here's the truth most people avoid: staying in survival comes with a cost. It may feel responsible and even look successful, but over time, it narrows your world. Survival is useful, but it is not a life strategy. My breakthrough wasn't choosing risk over safety, it was choosing whether I was willing to keep paying the cost of staying where I already knew I didn't belong. Take a minute and reflect on these questions. Where in your life is survival still making decisions? And what is that costing you? What belief is running underneath that decision? And what belief would need to be replaced in order to have the outcome that you want? Then take one small step within the next 24 hours on something you've been delaying, not the whole plan, just one concrete action. Momentum is built the same way beliefs were built, through repetition. This is where hypnosis becomes essential. Most people try to change from the logical mind, analyzing, planning, reasoning, and thinking their way forward. But the subconscious mind doesn't operate on logic, it runs on familiarity, emotional conditioning, safety, and identity. When the logical mind tries to force change without updating the underlying belief, it creates internal friction, overthinking, looping, hesitation, and self sabotage. Hypnosis bypasses that critical gatekeeper and works directly with the subconscious, the part of the mind that holds the master programming. Instead of spending years trying to figure out what's wrong, we go to the root. We identify the belief driving survival, update it, and once that belief shifts, aligned action stops feeling forced and starts feeling natural. If you see yourself in this is your signal. I work with people who are done surviving and ready to move forward with clarity, confidence, and alignment. This work is designed for those who know something needs to shift beneath the surface, so their actions, decisions, and direction can finally align with who they're becoming. This is not a surface level mindset work, it's deep, focused subconscious work designed to change the belief system that's been quietly running your decisions. If you're serious about change, book a exploratory call. This call is the first step. It's focused conversation to understand where you are, what you want to move toward, and whether this work aligns with your next chapter. Don't forget to schedule your exploratory call. Momentum begins with aligned action. If you're ready to take that step, this is where it starts. If something in this episode brought awareness to a pattern you hadn't fully seen before, take a moment to reflect on it. Awareness is where meaningful change begins. The more we understand the subconscious beliefs shaping our reactions, the more power we have to respond differently and create new outcomes. Thank you for spending this time with me and for being part of the conversation about awareness, growth, and transformation. If this episode helped you see something more clearly, please share it with someone who may benefit from hearing it. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss next week's Breakthrough Weekly. I am Monica Pelayo, and I'll see you next time.